And welcome back. It's another instalment of Empire of the Cop Insider with the lovely Neil Jones. Neil, how are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, you good?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I mean, City against Liverpool was obviously a fixture that carried a great deal of anxiety, perhaps for both sets of fans, as it tends to. But I mean, Liverpool really showed, even obviously as a side in transition, that this is a team that can and will challenge for top honours this season.
Yeah, I think so. I think it showed. I think it shows it's still got a way to go, but I think you have to view it as progress. I've been a little bit surprised by the sort of the general chatter around the game from certain quarters. This idea that sort of there was a gulf between the sides. I think City were the better team, but you would sort of expect them to be at home, and they were the better team often when Liverpool were at their very best, at the Etihad. So I don't think it was a game that sort of should set any alarm bells ringing with Liverpool. I think it tells them that they're not quite there yet. But I do think perhaps from a City perspective, I think there might be an element of frustration, not just at the fact that they dropped some points, but the fact that maybe their levels have dropped as well. So, yeah, I think Liverpool might take some frustration from it of their own in that they maybe felt like if they'd had a bit more quality, they actually could have got more from the game, or they could have got caused City even more problems. I think City were the better team generally, but Liverpool, I think, were the more dangerous team when they had the ball, or had more dangerous situations when they had the ball. They just didn't make the most of them. And you think of the first half with Darwin Nunez having a loose touch in the penalty area. Huge save from Ederson from the header. There were other chances you thought where maybe Szoboszlai could have pulled the trigger, or Curtis Jones might have pulled the trigger. In the second half, there was a chance where Diaz, doesn't get enough on a ball that really would have set up a good counter attack. So Liverpool definitely had their moments. They didn't maybe play at, their best level, and I suppose that's whether your glass is half full or your glass is half empty. Do you look and say, well, God, what's it going to be like when we do play at our best level? Or do you look at it and say, if only we had?
I don't know. I tend to kind of think maybe more half glass full in this one, because I think, oftentimes we aren't talking even about a point at the Etihad. I mean, City's. I mean, we've halted their winning run as well, wasn't it? Sort of 22 games.
So they'd won 23 straight games in the year 2023. 23 straight games at the Etihad. You think of, obviously, okay, yeah, they win a lot of games. They seem to win the Champions League sort of 4 or 5 quite regularly, don't they? But they've played Real Madrid. They've played, obviously, Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal in that period. Liverpool, obviously, as well. So they've not dropped a single point in that time. They've actually only been behind at the Etihad in the calendar year for 23 minutes, which is absolutely staggering. It shows the level that they're at. In terms of consistency, I listened to a few people. I listened to Kyle Walker on the radio on Saturday, and he was saying, "Oh, this is nowhere near the best Liverpool side we've faced." Now, he's right. Okay, yeah, you're right, but he didn't beat them. And also, what you're comparing really is you're comparing one of the all-time great teams. You're talking about sort of, and I think you can also flip it and say this is nowhere near the best City side Liverpool have faced. Even despite that record. So you sort of, what you're doing is you shine the light. Maybe you're judging these two teams on past meetings between them, which were meetings of, like I say, two of the best teams in Premier League history, two of the best teams in these respective clubs' history. Two sides which won European Cups, which won countless Premier Leagues, which set points records, which 90 plus. Maybe you might say from Saturday's evidence that these two sides are a little bit away from that level, but they're still pretty good. And Liverpool are within 1 point of a team that's won everything in the last few months.
I think ultimately, we have to bear in mind this is the start of a transition. Even City are transitioning to a certain degree, perhaps not as stark as our transition has been, completely reshaping our midfield. But to come away from this position with a point, I think is phenomenal. One thing that certainly stood out as well, sort of further back, is the centre-back partnership, Virgil van Dijk and Jean Matip. Is it fair to say that is the partnership going forward? It seems a bit harsh when you're looking at sort of a player of Konate's sort of quality, but I thought, certainly Matip's attributes seem to be quite valuable in a game like that, sort of bring the ball out of the back line. City, perhaps, maybe, is it fair to say, didn't really know what to almost do with it at times. I mean, it's mad to say that sort of after the season he had prior, but that seems to be the case now. And obviously, this is a team that's built on meritocracy. So, is that fair to say? Do we keep going?
No, I don't think so, because I think there's so many games coming up in December, and you think just in the next fortnight you've got Lask, Fulham, and then 2 away games, Crystal Palace and Sheffield United. So I think there'll be changes to pretty much all of the positions in the next few weeks. But I think what you would say is, in the big games at the moment, I think Matip is probably edged ahead. If you were talking about a must-win game or a cup final game or that kind of thing, trip to City, I think he's probably just edged ahead on form. I think he's been in better form than Konate this season. I think Konate's been decent enough, but I think there's been a few worries about him. Or not necessarily worries, just a few. He hasn't maybe reached his levels yet. He's had obviously some injury issues, fitness concerns more so. I thought, I would have started Konate. I would have probably gone down the negative viewpoint and started Konate, because I would have been worried about the pace of Doku. But I think again went for the positive option in terms of Matip, and said, well, what about when we've got the ball? We want our better ball playing centre back, and he is. I mean, there are a few better at carrying the ball into midfield, and you saw the run he went on in the first half when it ended with Nunez's header saved by Ederson. Not many centre backs can do that in any league, never mind the Premier League. So and never mind against City. There was another one in the first half, I think, very early on, where he was overlapping Trent down the right, and you would think, hang on, Joel, come on, let's think about this. But that's the endeavour or the adventure that he's got. Konate's not really that type of centre back. He's a lot more of he's a better athlete, and he's a better he's a stronger player than Matip. And I think he'll develop into being a better player all round. But his qualities maybe are better suited to different types of games. Keeping them fit will be the main thing, won't it? Keeping these players fit. You have got 5 potential centre back options there, if you count Jarell Kwanzaa as well. So keeping as many of them fit, so you can rotate and you can sort of take Matip out when there's a midweek game, or you can bring in Konate, or you can match up depending on what type of opponent you're facing. That's going to be key, because Liverpool, we're going to talk about injuries, I'm sure, in the next few minutes, but Liverpool need as many of their players fit as possible in this, massive run coming up to Christmas.
No, injuries are certainly going to come up very shortly. I just want to touch on one other sort of player quite quickly. One decision I was actually quite glad Jurgen made was regarding starting Curtis Jones. I thought when you're coming to a game like this at the Etihad, you're probably going to accept you're not going to have the largest share of possession. I think Curtis is kind of an integral player to sort of cutting that deficit slightly. I mean, a bit rusty, it's fair to say, but coming back from that injury and into a game of such magnitude, I don't know. I think he did all right. I don't know where you sort of coming out of it.
I think Jürgen would feel that he did okay when he had the ball, but I think there could have been a few moments where you'd have liked to have seen him be a little bit more forceful in just everything he did, whether that was winning the ball or whether it was passing it with real purpose. So it's been a criticism, I suppose, of Curtis, that he keeps the ball really well, but does he hurt teams often enough? And I think he had a couple of chances in the game where he could have been a little bit more, decisive with his pass. Obviously, he was taken off. Now, I don't think Liverpool's pressing worked particularly well in the first half. I think they were caught a little bit, and it's difficult against City, isn't it? Because they're so good in terms of the mix-up that they've got. They're all comfortable in tight spaces, but they've also got someone like Ederson who can break a line of your team, take 6 players out with one pass, without it even going in the air like he did. I think there was one pass he played to Bernardo Silva, which ended with a chance for City towards the end. So I think that maybe makes it a bit more difficult to just say, you can't just put a high press on City. They can play through that quite comfortably. And Curtis obviously is the leader of that, and you saw that a few times in the first half that he was trying to lead that. I think he maybe lost a little bit of heart at times in that. I wasn't too surprised when he was taken off. I personally would have started Gravenberch for the game. On account of what he actually did, and I was quite pleased. I said on another show on Friday why I would start Gravenberch, and the reason it was what he'd actually did for the equalising goal was that the ability to just dribble past a couple of players. And I thought that with City, I thought you could talk about keeping the ball, but actually what causes City the biggest amount of problems is travelling with the ball. And we saw Chelsea do it really well with Cole Palmer, with Sterling. And I wanted to see Liverpool do it a bit more with players, and I thought Gravenberch might have been the perfect person to do it. Obviously, you saw what he did for the equalising goal. He came on and ghosted past Rodri, played the ball down the flank, and Liverpool ended up getting a goal from it. So, yeah, those two different types of players competing for the same spot. I don't think there was anything that you sort of come away from and said, well, okay, that's that finalised. He's moved ahead of him. I think it's another one where you're looking at horses for courses at times and saying, well, okay, what type of game is it going to be? How much space is it going to be? What are they training like? What's their mood like? Their fitness like? And yeah, you've got decent options there. You didn't even talk about. Obviously, we didn't even talk about Harvey Elliott as a potential starter, but he's been in excellent form for Liverpool and for England under 21s this season. So at least they've got some players who are in good form, good options, and can bring something different each time they're picked.
No, I suppose that it comes back to that debate you almost have about Matip and Konate. Do you set it positively or negatively regarding City? And you almost say positively in the back line, perhaps maybe slightly negatively with the inclusion of Curtis at the start ahead of Gravenberch. Again, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because as you do say, Harvey Elliott in the discussion as well. There's so many players you can give credit to this season who are bench players at the time for the time being.
Yeah, you couldn't. You could have argued that Gakpo played the last game before the international break as a midfield player. They beat Brentford, so you could have said, okay, well, just keep him in there. And he's another player who's maybe a better dribbler or a better ball carrier. Me personally, I don't think it was a negative selection to pick Curtis. I think it was a big statement of trust in him. To get the nod in a game like that. I wouldn't say he absolutely repaid that faith, but he's clearly someone who's got the trust of the manager, and that's what he's been looking for, really, isn't it? Over the last couple of years, he's been dying to sort of get that run of games and that chance to say that, okay, even if I have a dodgy game or I have a disappointing game, you'll still put your faith in me and pick me again, and I'm sure we'll see Curtis in the Premier League again starting soon enough.
I mean, we have to talk about injuries as well, as you mentioned previously. Obviously, the big ones to Diogo Jota and Alisson Becker. We're due to receive further updates about this today, I believe. I think I saw your Substack for covering Liverpool this morning. I mean, you could argue to a certain degree that you certainly wouldn't want to see it happen, that Liverpool could get away with a relatively longish period for Diogo Jota, bearing in mind the firepower they have in reserve. But can't really make the same case for Alisson. I mean, obviously the fixture list is slightly generous. We've got Lask coming up, and then it's Fulham, Sheffield United, Palace, Union Saint-Gilloise. Before then, meetings with United, West Ham in the Cup, and of course the big one at home to Arsenal. That is one player we really don't want to see handed, a severe kind of hamstring tear that sees him out for potentially months on end, is it?
Yeah, no, I'd say the same about Jota as well. Actually, I don't think Liverpool want to be without any player for more than a couple of weeks at this stage. And you say that Liverpool have got a lot of firepower, but they play three of them of the five, and that means they only have one on the bench, and that means they're going to have to put a little bit more strain on the other forwards. So you don't want to be without any player at this stage. Alisson, look, I think we're all just hoping it's a very minor hamstring issue. It did look to be hampering him, didn't it? I mean, my hope, my overall overriding hope is that he was just trying to time waste, and that he was trying to sort of stop City's sort of train in the final minutes, and he was just trying to sort of keep them kid on a little bit by going down injured. But it didn't look like it did it when he was clearing the ball, and he was doing some strange clearances in the second half, and I wonder whether that was influenced by his hamstring. It didn't look like we're going to be seeing him. I mean, probably wouldn't have seen him on Thursday, but it doesn't look like we'll be seeing him next week, does it? And then you've obviously got 2 away games after that. You'd say, wouldn't you? But, Sheffield United and Crystal Palace, okay, and Fulham, we can cope. But like you say, you've got those big games coming up. You've got that Manchester United game, that Arsenal game. You'd want to have your number one back for those. So fingers crossed. It's a good news injury story. Fingers crossed. Same with Jota, who obviously is a little bit more worrying in that it was early in the second half and he's gone down and couldn't carry on. Which, yeah, I don't think that's going to be a minor thing or a nothing thing. But yeah, we're just hoping it's weeks and not months, and especially for someone like Jota as well. You saw how badly he was missed last season with a muscle issue. He had a calf tear, didn't he, which kept him out for sort of best part of 3 or 4 months. And you saw how much he was missed, not necessarily him himself, but having an extra option on the bench or having an extra option to come in and rotation. Obviously, the ability to score goals and to create goals, and he's been in pretty good form this season for Liverpool generally. Jota, he's got a lot of goals, a lot of assists, and he's done well for Portugal. So yeah, you want this to be an update where it's weeks, not months, or it's a week, not a month, because a month could cost Liverpool an awful lot with these two.
No, fingers crossed there. Certainly be huge misses for this Liverpool squad. But we are coming into sort of December period, so inevitably transfer stories will start to heat up again. I mean, there's been a lot of sort of movement on this in sort of recent weeks, particularly when it comes to the holding midfield role. We've reportedly moved on from Andre to consider alternative targets. I believe the Echo released a story suggesting now that we're not even considering the targets for the holding midfield role. I just want to sort of get your view on this generally, because there has been a lot of debate when it comes to McAllister's sort of suitability for the role. But again, I think many were sort of looking ahead at the sort of City side and going, well, he started quite reasonably well. But that's going to be the litmus test. If we can get through that, that's going to be a real sort of indication of to what extent Liverpool need to press the panic button and get someone in. And McAllister goes and has a very good game at the Etihad. It's worth emphasising. I think obviously Klopp's comments prior to the game are quite interesting, because he says, is Maka a natural born six? No. Has football developed in the last few ways, in ways which we wouldn't have imagined? Yes. Does that mean Maka can play the six? Yes, we can benefit if we have a compact formation. There is the acknowledgement there that he's not sort of the number 6 for the number 6 role, but in the modern sort of state of play in football, he does play a role. He's valuable on the half turn. He's reliable in possession. His passing accuracy, I think, at the Etihad was about 93%. That's pretty good. You'd have to think, because it's not going to be 93% without a lack of pressure. It's extraordinary numbers, really. I might even go as far as saying. Do you get the impression that the club have reached a point where they've kind of gone, well, actually, maybe we need to consider this as the long-term option? Or is it merely a case of going, well, we looked at Andre, but now because Maka's been so good in this role, not that we almost need something better than Andre, but it has to be someone who can come in and say, well, I can do all of this and more.
Yeah, it has to be someone better than Andre. I think that it's clear, isn't it? Listen, they signed 2 midfielders since we were linked with Andre. They've signed Wataru Endo and they've signed Ryan Gravenberch. Now, for me, they don't sign Endo if they're going to sign Andre, because Endo's 30, so you're bringing in someone who does that role, and then you're going to bring in someone who's 22, and he's just as unproven, less proven actually in terms of top level football. It doesn't make sense. And then they don't even play Endo. They play McAllister. So I think it has to be someone who's absolutely nailed on to improve Liverpool's team straight away if they're going to sign a holding midfielder, or someone whose potential is so elite that you can't ignore it, and you can't argue that they're going to be an elite player. So I'm not surprised at the Andre situation. We'll see, obviously, whether injuries, like we say, change the course a little bit in the next month or so, and it can easily happen. We've already seen, potentially the goalkeeper and a forward go down. It wouldn't be beyond the realms for a midfielder or two to start following in the next few weeks. I think the McAllister thing is really interesting, because Klopp keeps going on about compact Liverpool, when Liverpool are compact, McAllister looks great. He really does look good. You see him. There's a little clip yesterday, I think, or from Saturday. I don't know if you saw it, where Liverpool play around City in a sort of 10-yard space, and it starts from McAllister and it's Szoboszlai into, I think, Darwin to Curtis, and they play out, and there's 6 or 7 Liverpool players around the ball, and they're out so quickly, and you think, wow, that was impressive football. And they did that a few times in the game, and often it was McAllister with the first pass or McAllister with the ball win. You think of the goal the Liverpool scored. I think that comes from obviously Allister making a save and McAllister being the man to pick up the ball and play the first pass out. So he has got real qualities that can be used there. Liverpool have got to avoid, and you saw it. I mean, listen, I know it's Jeremy Doku, and I think he would have gone past a lot of people in the world. But they've got to avoid situations like that where McAllister's got space around them and players are isolating him one-on-one, because we've seen he doesn't have the pace, he doesn't have the one-on-one strength to sort of win those kind of duels. He very much needs a team around him where he can use his brain, he can use his positional play, he can use obviously his on the ball qualities. And Liverpool have been working towards that, and that's why I would be a little bit surprised if they completely changed tack now in January and went and bought an old school number 6, Fabinho, and sort of went, right, we're going to start going back down the old route, and I'm going to have runners in midfield. They've consciously moved their midfield towards being more technical and more sort of, what would you call it, more sort of progressive. And McAllister's a big part of that. And whether you think he's playing well or not, or he has played well, I had a comment on my Substack this week which said if he was English, he'd have been dropped by now, which I don't really agree with. But that tells you that there is a bit of a doubt from some of the supporters about his form. Whether you think that or not, look at what Jurgen does. Every time he's available, every time Liverpool have a game and McAllister's fit and available, he's in the starting lineup and he's in that as a number 6. So Liverpool definitely have faith in him, and yeah, I think that will colour what they do in the transfer market in January. Certainly, we'll see about next summer. There might be room for manoeuvre next summer if they want to change the team up again. But I think for now, I think Liverpool are committing to this idea that they're going to have a more technically minded midfield, and the job for the manager is to make sure that it's like he keeps saying, compact, and it's more ready to do all the number 6 bits as a team as opposed to just putting it on one individual.
I think with the criticism, do you feel it sort of boils down to some quarters of sort of the fan base struggling to almost process the fact that we have moved on from that lighthouse, that destroyer role? Effectively, Liverpool's midfield is different. I mean, a lot about Liverpool's squad is different. We're not as quite reliant on our fullbacks for creativity, but is it that transition that sort of some sort of struggle? Because you do look at the performances and think, well, he's kind of doing what Klopp wants. We are transitioning to a more possession-based sort of style of football. In that sense, McAllister is fulfilling that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is weird, isn't it? I mean, Liverpool until the weekend, and obviously by dint of conceding 1 goal against Manchester City, Liverpool have now got the 2nd best defence record in the Premier League. So whatever you might think about them being too weak or open or not being strong enough in those positions, they're not doing too bad, are they, defensively? They've conceded fewer goals than City, who've got the best number 6 in the Premier League in Rodri. Chelsea signed Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. I've actually just had to scroll to find them on the league table. They've conceded 20 goals in 13 games, and they've lost 5 games. So that tells you that it's not just about, we need a number 6 and that changes everything and you become a more robust team. You have to have everything else around it, don't you? And I think maybe with McAllister, possibly there was an idea of what he was as a player, and people thought that maybe we'd see him playing final passes and scoring goals and shooting from outside the box and doing these, sort of highlight reel kind of things that you're going, oh wow, like what a player. And I think he's probably, because he's been so far away from goal, it's harder to spot the good things that he does in a game sometimes. It's harder to see it, when he plays a real nice pass into someone's feet, or he reads the game well and he steps across and he wins a pass, wins a tackle, but it's not actually him winning the tackle because it's someone else pressing the ball and he just picks up the sort of the bit.
it's harder sometimes to spot that. And I think especially when it's a smaller or a less physically dominant player, you remember the moments when they get dominated. You remember the moments when they end up, sort of shrugged off by, like I say, like a Jeremy Doku, or they shrugged off by an Erling Haaland. You sort of, it notices more, doesn't it, when you think, oh wow, like he looked exposed there, as a player. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about with McAllister as a player. I think his form's been. It can be better. He can play better. There's been games where he hasn't played particularly well, but I don't have any concerns over him as being a good enough player to play for Liverpool long term. I don't have any concerns over him being able to play in this team, and being able to be a very effective player. I think the question would be rather, would he be more effective in Curtis Jones's position at City with another player behind him, or is this his most effective role for Liverpool? I don't know is the answer. I don't know. And I think the fact that Jurgen's played him in this role pretty much predominantly, certainly in this season, tells you that he feels the role is the deeper one.
I mean, if Jurgen's happy, then I think.
Yeah, we've done it. We've done it. I mean, you think back, just think back to Gini Wijnaldum when he signed. I think there was a similar mood towards Wijnaldum in maybe his first 3 months at Liverpool, where he was signed as this player who scored sort of 10, 12 goals for Newcastle from midfield. He was known as this goal scorer midfield player. And he came to Liverpool, and I remember the sort of vibe being a little bit like, well, what does he do? He doesn't. He's not really sort of. He's not a dominant midfield player who wins loads of headers and tackles. He's not scoring many goals. He's not particularly quick, sort of running past people. But he was neat and tidy, and he done all the sort of general bits quite well. I think McAllister's not dissimilar to that. He's a very smart footballer. He's a mature player. He looks to me like he's got a good temperament. He doesn't look like he's fazed by surroundings or situations. He looks like someone that, if you look across in the dressing room and you see that you're going into battle with someone like him, you think, yeah, come on, we'll up, he'd be up for this alongside us. So yeah, I don't have any concerns over McAllister. I think I probably would have liked to have seen him a little bit more as a number 8, just to see whether he might have actually added something even more to this team. But Liverpool have got a lot of good number 8s, and like I say, they're getting results and they're doing quite well in the league. So it's not like it's a sort of God, this needs fixing, because we're in dire straits. Liverpool are actually in a decent position. So yeah, long may that continue.
I mean, I almost wonder, would you get as much? Not that he doesn't have the attributes, but because of the way Liverpool's midfield is sort of set up now, Szoboszlai on the right, and then on the left, I think he tends to sort of keep the ball a bit more. There's less emphasis, I suppose, at times on doing what Szoboszlai does.
Yeah.
Would you? I do wonder to a certain degree. Say if you had McAllister on the left, Szoboszlai on the right, and then a natural number 6. Would you be getting as much as people expect out of McAllister? Or would he similarly be sort of expected to hold on to the ball a bit more in comparison to Szoboszlai?
Yeah, absolutely. And you could argue, when you get even less space, if you're playing in that role, you've obviously probably have similar defensive shortcomings, because you've got to protect the flank. You've got to go and protect usually very quick players who play on the flank. So you'd have Szoboszlai, you'd have McAllister having to sort of double up with Tsimikas against the Phil Foden and people like that. So you would still. There would still be the potential for issues to emerge in terms of what we're talking about with McAllister, physicality and covering spaces. And maybe, you might find that he's not as effective because he's not having, he's playing with his back to goal more. He's sort of playing sort of safe passes a little bit more, and you're not getting the sort of full benefit from him. He's definitely got. You can see it when he plays. I think he hasn't been. His quality hasn't been as high as he'd like it to be, but you can see the quality that he's got when he perhaps passes into Nunez's feet or to Szoboszlai, or he gets those little first time ones out of a dangerous area. He's got that. He's definitely got that in his locker, more so than people like Jordan Henderson and Fabinho, who played that role successfully in the past, or even James Milner, people like that. So he's got attributes that can be really effective for Liverpool. I think the big thing, keep going back to it, I sound like Jurgen myself now. The big thing is having people around him, and when Liverpool can break the play up as a 3 or a 4, as opposed to expecting one player to do it, they're far more effective. And when they have Curtis or they have Gravenberch or they have Soboslai around McAllister and they're biting, they're hunting the ball together, that's when the number 6 becomes a sort of a team effort as opposed to an individual one.
No, absolutely. But it leads me on to the next part of the topic, really, which is centre backs. Really, because if we're not looking at sort of holding midfielders or keeping it on the back burner, sort of comparatively, I'm very interested to see what the club do in the market regarding that, because it's such. I mean, we've talked about this so many other sort of podcasts, haven't we? It's a very, very tricky position to fill here, because you're looking for someone young, left-footed, happy to play on the bench. But has
left-sided. Left-sided. I wouldn't say left-footed. Yeah. You're right. It's a tough brief, isn't it? I think there's a couple of things that you would say are possible. One would be a young centre back, left-sided centre back, who is viewed as elite and is available. So someone who's really 17, 18, 19. The other would be a centre back that you've identified as a long-term target who suddenly becomes available in January, a la a Luis Diaz situation or a Cody Gakpo situation. Obviously different positions. So that would be the one. I don't think Liverpool don't need to go and buy a short-term centre back. They're not there yet. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it stays that way. They don't need to do it when the window opens. They don't need to go and get a body in, because they have enough. I've just mentioned 5 there earlier. I think Kwanzaa has established himself enough, certainly for cup games and for certain Premier League games, that you'd say, well, if he has to play, that's not a problem. Jarell Kwanzaa can play at centre back for Liverpool in within reason. Joel Matip's done well, obviously, this season. Konate's got more to come. Van Dijk's form's been good, and his availability's been good. He's only missed games through suspension this season, so that's all positive. And Joe Gomez is still around, and he's a little bit of the utility man, isn't he? At this moment in time, he's just sort of a little, well, where's he needed? Okay, left back against Toulouse or Luton, and right back in other games, centre back potentially in some games. So you've got those players at the moment. So you're not in a position where it's like, right, we need this body in that's just gonna, fill a gap for us. It's got now they can look at the right side and who's the one for the longer term that's gonna be the difference maker for Liverpool as a centre back, because we have to accept that Matip, whether he has a great season, he might earn himself another contract, but he's still going to be 33, and he's still going to need someone to step up and replace him. Van Dijk's going to be 33 in the summer, 33 or 32, so in his 30s anyway in the summer. And Joe Gomez has got doubts, obviously, around whether he's got the full trust of the manager to play a full season, or even a sort of a regular run of games as centre back. So longer term, there's definitely a need for one. Is that longer term option available in January would be the question. It might be, like I say, a young one. There's been a couple of players linked, hasn't it? Moscardo was it the guy who was linked? A young Brazilian lad. I think I've lost count of these young Brazilians.
I've heard of Moscardo. I think it's Moscardo. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Barado's a midfielder, is he? Maybe. Yeah, maybe one of them. But listen, that they're just names that have been plucked. I'm not suggesting Liverpool are in for those players. It's just that if it's someone of that ilk, a really young sort of lad from South America who's going to come across, okay, that's an option. Or if it's a player that a longer term guy. I mean, he isn't going to be, but let's say Levi Colwill was Chelsea just decided in January, right? We're ready to get rid of him. We need to change everything. He's available. Then Liverpool might look to do that, or Piero Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen. Right? Okay, they're available. There we go. We'll bring that forward, and we'll make a move and give them 6 months to settle before they become a sort of an integral sort of player next season. They're the options. I'd be on the negative side of that one at the moment, but again, a lot depends on what the injury situation is like come January. And I think what Diaz showed as well a little bit, and I suppose it's a little bit different if you're buying an attacker than a defender, but Diaz showed that even when you don't necessarily need the player, it can give everyone a lift when you bring in a player and you show that sort of, oh right, okay, we're adding another one to the squad as well. Like, we're really having a good go at this. It might be a bit different if you're bringing in a sort of fifth, sixth choice centre half as opposed to another jet heeled forward. But they are possibilities, and I wouldn't be amazed if Liverpool done something there in January. But I think it's going to have to be the right player now. It's not a situation where Liverpool are going to have to fix a problem in January. It's where they can start looking at a longer term solution.
No, and it's a position you kind of want the club to be in. Given when we're looking sort of at the prior season, thinking, my God, we're going to have to change so much just to get this side capable of challenging the top again. But to be in a position for signings down the line and go, lads, we only need to tweak this and this here.
Yeah.
That is incredible, given what we all watched last
season.
And
look at what they've done with the age of the side as well. You look at that really, and you think, look, Salah. Obviously Allister, you give him obviously, but I think goalkeeper age is sort of a different age to outfield. Van Dijk and Matip. And then other than that, you look at sort of prime age players, aren't you? You sort of Trent 25, McAllister 24, Szoboszlai 23, Nunes 24, Gakpo young, Diaz, Gravenberch, Curtis Jones. There's real sort of potential there, and then you haven't even, you've got Elliott, you've got Bajcetic, you've got potentially someone like Ben Doken could emerge as a player. You've got Jarell Kwanzaa as well. So there's a lot of players there that are of the age where you can think not only are they in their sort of they've got a real good age and experience behind them, but they've also got a little bit of room to get better as well. So there's growth potential there in this Liverpool squad, and all of a sudden it looks far less sort of in need of an overhaul than it did 12 months ago, didn't it? If you think back to sort of 12 months ago, I said 12 months ago, not even that. April when they went to City, they had Oxlade Chamberlain. You thought, well, he's not long term. Keita's not long term. Thiago isn't long term. Jordan Henderson's not long term. Fabinho, James Milner, Firmino. You were looking at that saying, wow, God, that's sort of 7 or 8 players there that are sort of coming to the end of their shelf life. At the moment, I only really look at Liverpool squad at the moment and think maybe sort of Thiago, Matip, I would say, are probably the only 2 that I'd look. And even Matip's doing well enough at the moment to say, actually, do you know what? If Liverpool wanted to give him another year, you couldn't sort of argue at this moment in time. So I only really look at maybe 2 players in the squad at this moment, or taking quality out of it. You might have an opinion on, okay, actually we can get a better player than Tsimikas or whoever. But age-wise, I don't look at anyone and think, right, they're going to need replacing very, very soon.
And even then, beg pardon. Even then, sort of Tsimikas had a very good game as well at the Etihad. So
I wanted to mention Tsimikas because, listen, I'm as big a doubter as anyone of Tsimikas as a player. Generally, I wouldn't have played him at City. I would have played Joe Gomez because I would have been concerned about Tsimikas's concentration. There was nothing to be concerned about. He was excellent. I thought Tsimikas. I thought he had the kind of game that I thought he couldn't have in a game like that, where he wasn't really getting forward. He wasn't really sort of, bombing on and getting caught out of position. He just played left back really sensibly and give credit where it's due. It won't be the first time. It won't be the last time that I'm wrong about something. That's Kostas Tsimikas proving a few people wrong, and good on him. I thought he was one of Liverpool's best players actually in on the day, and bodes well, doesn't it, with some big games coming up?
No, absolutely. It bodes very well. It seems like a perfectly positive place to end this latest instalment of Empire of the Cop Insider. Neil, thank you so much for popping on again. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. Everyone can go and catch your work, of course, on Twitter or X, however you'd like to call it, at Neil Jones Goal. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, you do have the Substack covering Liverpool, where everyone can catch all the latest around Liverpool Football Club. It's a superb Substack at neilj.substack.com. Go read it, go subscribe, go enjoy it. And of course, we've got our own Substack at empireofthecop.substack.com, where we will be releasing this latest instalment of the Empire of the Cop Insider with Neil Jones, and of course on our YouTube. Do feel free to give a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Leave your thoughts on how Liverpool's season is progressing. We'd love to hear your thoughts. This has been Empire of the Cop Inside. I've been Farrell Keeling. We've had the lovely Neil Jones. Take care.